As you'll all recall, J.K. Rowling spearheaded an international hate campaign against Algerian boxer Imane Khelif during the Paris Olympics, and she kept insisting that Imane Khelif was a man who was beating up on women, even though it was patently false. Now, just to refresh your memory, she tweeted out, "Could any picture sum up our new men's rights movement better? The smirk of a male who knows he's protected by a misogynist sporting establishment enjoying the distress of a woman he's punched in the head and whose life's ambition he's just shattered." Now, again, Imane Khelif is a cis woman. But J.K. Rowling also took aim at Chinese boxer Lin Yuting, who is another cis woman at the Paris Olympics, and she also accused Lin Yuting of being a man as well. And regardless of how many people corrected her, she refused to stop tweeting about Imane Khelif in particular, and it got so bad that Khelif filed a cyberbullying lawsuit against her. And after weeks of silence from Rowling, many of us had wondered if she finally had learned her lesson, maybe, but it turns out she did not. She is incapable of growing and learning. In fact, she attacked Khelif's appearance again after that period of silence and demanded that she release the results of a DNA test to prove that she is sufficiently woman, I guess. And even though Imane Khelif was brought to tears by these despicable attacks, J.K. Rowling never felt an ounce of sympathy for the deluge of hate that she incited against this woman. She never apologized, never even bothered to issue a correction. So it goes without saying that J.K. Rowling is a terrible human being who has not and will never learn her lesson, and she already found a new target. This time, it is 24-year-old Barbra Banda, who is a soccer star from Zambia, and she plays for Orlando Pride, and she's also the captain of her country's national team, and she just won the vote to be BBC's Footballer of the Year. So what's the problem? This is a woman who is succeeding. You would think that J.K. Rowling would be happy about that. But no, J.K. Rowling, the arbiter of femininity and womanhood, doesn't think that Banda's woman enough to be deserving of this award. And she presumably thinks that Banda is a man pretending to be a woman. So in response to this news, she tweeted out, presumably the BBC decided this was more time efficient than going door to door to spit directly in women's faces. And as you can see, she's responding to someone who's pointing out that Banda failed to meet sex eligibility requirements and was apparently banned from playing by the Confederation of African Football several years ago. Now, because of this, it's led to speculation about her possibly being trans, as if that's such a bad thing. But Banda is not trans. She is a cis woman. She identifies as a cis woman, and she was assigned female at birth. And for some additional context, Out reports, all this transphobia arises from an incident in 2022 when Zambia withdrew Banda from its team for the Women's Africa Cup of Nations after a doctor refused to sign off on her sex verification. While some reports say it was because of high levels of testosterone, that is untrue, and the real reason was evaluation of her physical conditions according to her agent. Nothing, no existing regulations that we are aware of prevents Barbara's participation, he added. The Confederation of African Football Communications Director, Luck September, said that there is no such decision from the CAF Medical Committee when asked if the organization was responsible for Banda's removal from the team. However, the president of Zambia's Football Association said whatever happened was purely a CAF requirement. Now, the FAS says it is working on improving its gender testing, which it considered to be a lot more stringent than FIFA regulations, and they put too much stress on testosterone levels. She was then ruled eligible by FIFA, the top soccer organization in the world, for the 2023 Women's World Cup, with FIFA saying the World Cup participants assure that they carry out their own investigations and that they clearly show that their players are female. So, like Imane Khelif and Yun Lin Ting, Barbra Banda was subjected to sex verification, which is something that male athletes are not subjected to, by the way, and it called into question whether or not she was a real woman for transvestigators like J.K. Rowling. And we're going to come back to sex verification in a moment, but ask yourself why J.K. Rowling almost always fixates on women of color. She's the most suspicious of black women and women of color. I mean, 2 of the 3 high-profile women that she has transvestigated this year are African women. Now, putting aside Rowling for a moment, black women and women of color in general are disproportionately the targets of national and international transvestigations. Think of Sierra, Michelle Obama, Brittany Griner, Caster Semenya, Serena Williams, and others. What do all of these women have in common? They are black women. So J.K. Rowling isn't just revealing her transphobia, she's also exposing her racism. And my friend Olaimi Olurin explained why this happens in a recent video.
Understand that transphobia doesn't just hurt, exclude, and endanger trans women. It hurts Black women overall, who have historically had our 1, femininity and womanhood disregarded, 2, our physical features masculinized, which will be a core element of this video, and 3, denied the social standing and protection afforded to our white and non-Black counterparts. Colorism refers to the privileges granted based on how close your proximity to whiteness is. As a result, the darker you are, the less privilege you receive and the less desirable you are. So, both dark-skinned Black women and men experience anti-Blackness that is exacerbated by colorism that affects how we're perceived and how desirable we're considered. But our gender changes that experience, because a feature of colorism is that dark skin is considered more masculine while light skin is considered more feminine. So what happens is dark-skinned Black women are seen as more masculine and light-skinned women are seen as more feminine and thus more desirable. This phenomenon doesn't spare anyone. It takes no prisoners, not even the first Black First Lady of the United States of America, our beloved Michelle Obama.
She is 1,000% right. And I'm going to link you to the full video down below and highly encourage you to watch it because she breaks down the interconnectedness of transphobia and racism and colorism, and it is very fascinating. Now, going back to J.K. Rowling, she targets non-white women because she is either wittingly or unwittingly playing into this stereotype that women of color and Black women are more masculine compared to the more dainty, feminine white women. But when you start to really unpack what it is that makes women real women to these people, that's where you get into very dangerous territory. For example, there are women who can't reproduce or who are intersex but identify as women. Are they real women to J.K. Rowling? Why does she get to determine if they are or aren't? It depends on the transphobe that you're talking to with regard to those questions, but there are also women with PCOS who have been misgendered before as well. We've talked about this. They've been transvestigated, but they're cis women. They have elevated levels of testosterone, and that leads to the production of excess body hair. Are these women not real women if they don't shave their facial hair, even though they're as cis as J.K. Rowling? I mean, she'd probably argue no, because they would fail a gender verification test, and that seems to be her standard, I guess. But even though J.K. Rowling loves these tests because she thinks that it's helping to suss out the trans people who she hates, all it's doing is subjecting every single woman to pain and suffering that's unnecessary, both trans and cis alike, which is why the Human Rights Watch has called on sports governing bodies to end the practice altogether, since female athletes, largely from the global south, are disproportionately targeted and harmed by so-called sex testing regulations. They also say, additionally, women being observed under the regulations and in some cases being compelled to undergo a medical examination amounts to policing women's bodies based on arbitrary definitions of femininity and racial stereotypes. And that is absolutely correct. Now, to demonstrate this, they share the story of Annette Negesa. She is a Ugandan runner who was put through hell following results of a blood test that made her ineligible to compete in women's sports. Now, I'll link you to the video down below if you want to see her full story. It is very sad, just to warn you. But again, this is not something that male athletes are subjected to. But yet you have so-called feminists like J.K. Rowling using these sexist gender verification tests to delegitimize women who she believes aren't sufficiently feminine or aren't real women. But, it's weird that she is implicitly and explicitly supporting these types of tests for women when male athletes don't have to go through this, even though certain males do have natural features that give them biological advantages. As David Dole points out, Michael Phelps, for example, possesses a disproportionately vast wingspan. His double-jointed angles gives his kick unusual range. In a quirk that borders on supernatural, Phelps apparently produces just half the lactic acid of a typical athlete. And since lactic acid causes fatigue, he's simply better equipped at a biological level to excel in his sport. Now, just stop for a moment and ask yourself, can you imagine the level of humiliation and ridicule that Michael Phelps would be subjected to by people like J.K. Rowling if he were a woman? But since he's a man, the response is, wow, he got really lucky. I guess nature just dealt him a good deck of playing cards. But if it's a woman, we screech at the top of our lungs and insist that we see her genitalia and have a blood test and see the DNA results and determine whether or not she's sufficiently woman. It is so disgusting. Sex testing in sports is creating a climate of mass hysteria and paranoia that is harming cis and trans women. and it's giving bigots like J.K. Rowling ammunition to police the femininity of other women, especially if they happen to be non-white. It is so fucked up. Now, while it is true that black women and women of color, both cis and trans, bear the brunt of transvestigations, we have reached a point in our collective cultural hysteria where basically no one is safe, right? I mean, I've talked about before how even some men like Kyle Rittenhouse and Andrew Tate have been the subjects of online transvestigations. Even AI is being transvestigated by these freaks. To show you what I mean, Evan shared a screenshot of somebody's innocuous post about the talent of volleyball players, and one of the first replies is pointing out the quote-unquote bulge, while not realizing that that is not a penis, that's a mons pubis, you fucking moron, which all women have. Vaginas aren't perfectly flat, and I feel like it's kind of embarrassing that he doesn't know that. And second of all, if you look closely, you'll see that this is not even a real human being. It is clearly AI, but this person was so fixated on her genitalia that he missed the fact that it wasn't even a real picture. But that's not all, because even if you don't have a particularly large mons pubis, well, you better make sure that you express your femininity at all times. Never ever forget that you have to play up this feminine caricature that the transvestigators want, otherwise they're going to be suspicious of you. For example, Lindsay Hanna shared her traumatic experience in a bathroom airport, saying, "At a loss for people right now. This morning while at the airport, I was washing my hands in the bathroom and this woman is staring at me and shouts, and I do mean shout, 'You're disgusting.' I look at her and then dry my hands and just walk out. She immediately is coming out after me and now into the open with all the gates and many people around, and again shouting that I am disgusting for being in the women's bathroom and how it is for women. At this point, people are really staring and it is so embarrassing. My gate is right there and we are boarding soon. I calmly say, I have alopecia, I am a woman, but just don't have hair. She backs away and says, whatever, just get away. Just absolute tears this morning. I don't even know what to say. I am sad, mad, embarrassed, heartbroken, and just a lot of feelings. I always try to see the good in people and extend grace, but I'm finding it really hard right now." Yeah, I mean, downright despicable. But this is not the first time something like this has happened. In fact, these types of events are becoming increasingly common since society is becoming more transphobic. It happens to cis women with pixie haircuts. It happens to cis girls with short hair whose parents have been accused of genital mutilation. I mean, it's common, it's widespread, but even the people who become the victims of transvestigations sometimes end up playing into these tropes themselves. I say this because after her post went viral, Lindsay also talked about how she was transvestigated again before, and somebody confronted her saying, "You're the problem with sports. Men should not be claiming to be female and competing with them when they're male." And she later adds, "And yes, I 100% agree. Males should not be playing against females. It is called alopecia. The pure ignorance of people is mind-blowing." And I think that she believes throwing trans women under a bus will save cis women, but it just doesn't work that way. As J.K. Rowling has taught us, you will never be able to provide these people with enough proof that you are sufficiently woman enough for them, because they want to enforce strict gender norms on everyone, including cis women. So if you don't check every single box and you dare to deviate even slightly from gender stereotypes, they're going to be suspicious of you too. Women working jobs and wearing pants, that was once very contentious. Not to mention how cis lesbians weren't accepted into feminist circles since they also weren't thought to be real women. It's an antiquated way of thinking that hurts both cis and trans women. But while this hysteria, it often traumatizes cis women, of course. Statistically, there's more cis women than there are trans women. It often gets trans women killed. And we can't forget about that, right? So shame on all the people like J.K. Rowling for using her platform to foster this kind of hateful environment, because it's not just traumatizing cis women. This paranoia about trans people and trans women and their bodies, it gets them killed. It instigates violence against them. But she doesn't care. That's what she wants, actually. Transvestigations obviously stem from this idea that if you can out someone for being trans, you can make a judgment about their self-worth and determine the level of threat that they pose to cis women. But trans women are women, and they just want to live their lives like everyone else. And contrary to popular belief, they pose no threat to cis women. In fact, they are 4 times as likely to be victims of sexual abuse. So the only way to protect all women is to protect both cis and trans women. And J.K. Rowling might think that she's only hurting trans women, but she's hurting all women. cis women too. And I hope that Barbra Banda follows Imane Khelif's lead here and sues the shit out of J.K. Rowling, because if she refuses to stop being a bigoted piece of shit, I think that she deserves at least some accountability. You know, a small payday isn't going to reverse the trauma that J.K. Rowling is causing in all of these women, but I think that her transphobia and misogynoir cannot go unchallenged. So I hope that Banda does what Imane Khelif did. Get that payday.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Play stupid games.
F around and find out.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Play stupid game. Pride. Trans rights are human rights. It is necessary to push trans on the kids. Pride.